Yeah, go. We're here. Whoa. Go the game. If you know, you know.
Many people do.
Ancient. I just mean it's been a topic of conversation in our very fun and cool Discord, which is for which is for patrons only.
Oh yeah, doff of the cap.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we would talk about Go. There's links to how to. It's a measly couple bones. But
as little as 2.
Look, you're listening to, as you must know, the Spine Crackers podcast,
starring me, Gabe,
and me, Matthew,
and
special guest,
me, Paul.
Special guest.
I'm special guest. Is that what I've been demoted to? The special guest?
No.
Featuring.
I'll take it.
No. Well, it's like, Paul's the Greg Turkington. Is that guest every time?
I'm a guest. I'm always the guest.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm okay with that.
No. 3 equal co-hosts.
Yeah.
Talking about books, talking about life, you know?
Right, inevitably.
What are we talking about today?
We're talking about The Glass Bees by Ernst Junger.
Oh, boy.
And why do you say that, Gabriel?
Well, it might be Patreon-only content. I think it probably will be, actually, because I have some talking points about it. But Junger was, arguably a Nazi, fought for Germany during both World Wars in his long 102-year life.
Yes.
And somewhat of a controversial figure. Equally controversial is Matt here, our co-host, who just relentlessly picks Nazi books for us to read.
I don't know why, but there's
the fourth one?
I think this is like the 4th one, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just something that just draws me to the to the sort of ideas being
genre.
dealt with, and just the sort of regal nature every time such ideas are voiced by people involved. It's funny because I literally do want to read that Roberto Bolaño book, The Third Reich.
It's on the list, I know.
It's
Sure
happening.
you do.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's it. I wonder why Bolaño wrote about Nazis so much.
That is actually a better question to me. Like, why?
That's probably something to save for when we read that book. But
yeah,
because I'm a guest, I might just not show up for that episode.
That's okay. Peacefully protest that one.
Yeah. All right. Well, so Matt, this was your choice, as already covered.
Obviously.
1957, originally published. So, what's up? What's this book about? Why'd you pick it?
Well, one of the infamous unrecorded episodes was on Ernst Junger's, I believe, last novel ever written, Eumsville.
That sounds right. I think we talked about it when we talked. Yeah, the lost episode.
And
I'm just going to say this right now. If anyone through any medium donates $1,000 to us, we will make Paul reread and re-record an episode on Eumsville.
Easy clap.
And I'll probably die on camera during that discussion.
And that price is also highly negotiable.
Yeah, for a measly 200 bones, we might be able to do it. No, I chose this one because it was actually the first one I had read. I've only read Eumsville and this. And I was actually more drawn to it initially.
So you've read this already?
Mm-hmm, yeah, this is the second time I've read it. And And I was initially drawn to it because it was a sci-fi book. Like that's how it was kind of sold to me anyway. And like kind of like the very earliest discussions of nanobots and this kind of thing. So I got, which is funny because when we talked about Nazi literature in the Americas, the other Bolaño book we read, he talks a lot about, sci-fi being a kind of gateway or whatever, or like, somehow a realm in which people with certain proclivities or sympathies might vent in a kind of clouded manner. But yeah, I don't know. I guess back in my younger days,
younger.
He definitely was like described as controversial and like disallowed, and that might have been the draw, initially.
Spicy, edgy, edgelord,
edgelord online, r/lit kind of like shit. But yeah, I don't know. I picked up this one because of the sci-fi thing, and I was just curious about Junger as this like kind of forbidden and very controversial literary figure.
Yeah. I think we'll probably talk a lot about, and maybe, like I said, maybe we'll save some for the Patreon, which, by the way, if you want this full episode, the rest of it will be available on Patreon. We're still experimenting with our new format. I just want to make sure everyone's clear on what's going on here. So I'm sure we'll talk about Junger's fascism and or maybe fascism and or not fascism.
Or his genuine fascism and his like weird morphs through still believing that probably, but then like he was 102 years old when he died. Like he had many phases and he wrote through that, all of that. So there's like this, you can chart like a bizarre arc of development over that time.
And of course, just like not that this necessarily says anything definitive about his personal proclivities or beliefs, but the interesting distinction of being banned both by Hitler and by the Allied powers after the war, some of his work.
Yeah, because he rose to fame by writing a war memoir, his World War I memoir. He was a
Storm of Steel.
Yeah, he was a war hero. That was in the 20s, like 1920, I think.
Is that a Game of Thrones book?
It definitely could be.
I feel like Game of Thrones might be doffing the cap ever so slightly.
Well, so that was the one that Hitler liked, but it was some of his later work that was banned.
Yes, yeah. Hitler liked that because, Junger, fought in the First World War and was like he got wounded like 14 fucking times. Like he seemed kind of unkillable, and he had this sort of mythos around him for doing all of that.
Right.
So that kind of launched him to fame super early in the 1920, I believe. And then the book we're reading now was published in 1957. So what I found interesting, right off the top about reading this was like you could feel the kind of, the lead character is this, I'll do the plot synopsis, right? The lead character is this like ex-cavalryman in, a alternative, I guess, future. It's not really the world we live in. I
think that's one of the most interesting aspects of the book is when does this book take place?
Yeah, it's sort of unclear. Junger did this in Hume'sville as well a little bit, I think. Like, it's all every sign points to it very clearly being like post World War II or like World War I, I would say actually.
Yeah.
Which it feels like it's a continuation of his reckoning with things that he was already writing about after, like in the midst of World War I. But at the same time, there's like this kind of like.
Well, wait, can I pause you right there, real quick?
Yeah.
What makes you say that this is that this is more of a post World War I narrative than post World War II when this was published 10 years after World War II and he fought in both?
I feel like World War I was where, he was charged with, and I think kind of with reason valorizing the experience of war and whatnot. But I think that's the first moment that he engaged with dehumanizing murderous technology, which is, I think, kind of
like a lot of writers who were engaged in sort of like that. That was kind of one of the whole impeti for the tradition of what we call literary modernism, right?
yes, yeah. This kind of rupture, and it just feels more like a discussion with himself from that initial like experience versus World War II, which really feels like, I a slow burn of just the after effects of World War One.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
But yeah, this cavalryman is he exists in a post-World War world, and he's just kind of like languishing. He's got a wife. He's not got a lot of money. He's kind of down on his luck, and he's trying to string together jobs. And so this old friend of his, who's kind of a headhunter, recruits him to work for this new type of like titan of industry, an Italian toy maker, basically named Zapparoni.
Which
Tough to. I mean, we can't just come out of Italo Calvino and just right into this. It's really rough.
I know. It's too much.
Well, before the podcast, Gabe and I were talking about how there's a little bit of Philip K. Dick naming vibes I got from this. Definitely with Zapparini.
Zapparoni.
Literally, like,
And it's like
It's like electric pepperoni. I mean, it's just
can't.
exactly
I
it's
can't.
tough.
I was definitely like Zapparoni. We just got to get it out.
Yeah. So that's the guy who's the main guy. He is kind of like a CEO and sort of overseer of what is now this kind of massive operation that extends to all parts of life. I think he primarily sort of succeeds as an entertainer. Anyway, the main character is basically the rest of the book, this next half of the book, he's on a job interview to see if he'll be head of security for this sort of unorthodox position in this kind of unorthodox corporate environment. Yeah, and that's all I'll say.
Yeah, I think that's it's not a book that I would call like plot heavy. It's not particularly action packed, as it were, for like a sci-fi novel of this type.
It's digression central.
It's because it's all interspersed with basically the only two events in the book are Richard, who's the main character's name, meeting his friend whose name I forget. Do you guys remember? Twinnings. Yeah. Thank you. And having this conversation about getting this job interview, him driving to the job interview, and then the job interview itself, and then everything else is digressive, either kind of sociological, philosophical musings on Richard's part, and or various sorts of flashbacks to the war years or other parts of his life, which narratively is of course I think kind of interesting. How did it strike y'all?
I mean, narratively is kind of a loose term for this style of writing. I mean, I wrote down in my notebook, meandering journalistic pacing. Because the way he writes, and it happened in Hume'sville for me too, is just like there's not a lot of dialogue. It's all Richard talking about past events in a way that I just can't seem to jive with at all. It's like very flat, very dry. So yeah, I had huge issues with just paying attention to this book. Honestly, I just really can't get my head around this style of just kind of like ADHD, writing about one thing, jumping from the next. It's like, it works for me in some books, but in this book, it was a slog. Sorry, Matt.
Spoilers.
I'm good.
it struck me as kind of like yeah, I mean, I've never read any Sebald, maybe sometime, but it struck me as what some people call kind of sort of Sebaldian, where it's just digression and memory and, kind of these slowly progressing sense impressions that trigger another memory, which trigger another digression, and then you'll have like a half a page of the actual events unfolding in real time, and then memory, digression, etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know you have mixed
It
feelings
seems to
about
have,
Sebald,
like,
Matt.
it like stopped and started a lot. And I remember reading one chapter like 3/4 through the way through the book, and it opened up with a passage that I was like, this seems like it should have been the first paragraph of this book. I'll try to find it, but like, yeah, the way he jumps around just narratively, stylistically, just like confused me, and it just did not keep my attention at all.
I think, I feel like the kind of initiatory, like, memoir style has stayed even in fiction for Junger, as far as I can tell. Right? He's much more interested in probing his, like, impressions and memory and doing kind of, I suppose, like, philosophical musings on how things have changed over time, which makes sense for a guy, who basically lived to be 102. Like, he, it feels very much like almost like, yeah, a person, like most, I guess, writers from the modern period, how to cope with what has occurred, and like, therefore, memory and the past factor in heavily, and how to square that with a present that seems to, kind of demean or undermine or flat out reject prior values, prior systems of belief, prior worldviews.
Yeah, which I think is sort of where the inevitable discussion of Junger's kind of political bent has to come in, right? Because there's a lot of sort of, I don't want to say romanticizing the past per se, because a lot of the memories that Richard has of the war and so on are certainly traumatic, right? And he saw some fucking shit.
Yeah.
But there's also a deep sort of romance to it, I think, in the way he describes being in the battlefield, and specifically the way that it looks at the war, the way that war and the machinery and technology of war has progressed to where, because sort of what he did before coming to Zapparoni, who I want to talk about in a minute, but what he was basically like a consultant on like tank building projects.
He was a tank inspector.
Yeah, he was a tank inspector, right? Exactly. And so there's this weird tension between his sort of romance of the past and sort of skepticism of what Zapparoni is doing with all of this trauma that he saw. His main thing, like you said, Matt, he's a cavalryman, and he sort of talks up a lot the kind of romance of the cavalry charging down the hill into battle on the horses, right, and how and contrasts that negatively with just all these dudes in a fucking sweaty tank hole, just like sitting there, yeah, and it being this like faceless kind of killing at a distance, right? Which I think just one of the many ways in which this book I think is like deeply prophetic, which to me mirrored a lot of the discussions that have been going on about like drone killing and stuff like that.
Yeah, technology has definitely just continued in that trend of depersonalizing and distancing people from from what they're doing in the realm of war and fucking killing people. But I think the thing about the like cavalry, which initially I was just like, yeah, it's just some like old guy now kind of grumbling about how things used to be like honorable and beautiful. But I as the novel went on, I was like, I feel like the horses are supposed to be just sort of also a little bit like, yeah, they're replaced by tanks. And now I'm talking, it's not very like subtle. He's like, now I'm talking about how Zapparoni is making movies using automatons and they're better than people. And so if you think horses can just disappear like that, you know, in a flash, because they're useless to a kind of inhuman machine logic, just wait and see what happens to people.
Right, and I think that you know, we should probably talk about the figure of Zapparoni a little bit here too, because he's
Italian.
He's Italian.
First of all,
yeah, if you couldn't tell. But he's like this weird. He's like this weird fusion of you know, Walt Disney and Elon Musk and Willy Wonka.
Yeah,
You know, he's this classic sort of mysterious
And a pizza pie.
that's right.
and Papa John.
And Geppetto.
Papa John.
Wait, Geppetto might actually be a real thing, actually.
Yeah.
Because yeah, like we've been talking about, he has these sort of insanely intricate and like detailed, you know, automata that mimic humans, and there's a lot of like really prophetic and creepy details in the book, to the point that like there'll be Zapparoni will make a movie with these automata, and people viewing the movie will fall in love with them and write them love letters and basically like start stalking them.
I highlighted that segment.
Oh my God.
It's just weird weebs and like DeviantArt fucking, you know, Rule 32 people.
Totally. He basically predicted the waifu like culture, which is just mind-boggling.
Well, what I liked about that segment was like, you know, is whatever that poor like suicidal kid who is like, she's not real. What I liked also was like the like conclusion of that, which was like Zapparoni Works apologizing to that kid for his sort of delusion, but also saying like, you know, she could be built that way for you, and just like doing sex doll nods of the cap too. Like,
yep.
Look,
everything is a new market.
Yeah.
Paul, what do you think about Zapparoni?
I think your description of him is correct, though. Just kind of like this Elon Musk type dude. But my view on Zapparoni was always like overshadowed by Richard, the narrator's just like almost weird fascination with him. Like the most of the book is just him talking about Zapparoni, and that alone kind of weirded me out. Like, what is this guy's angle? Does he like? Is he just obsessed with him? Like, why is he so fascinated with this guy's career? I mean, I know why, but it's just like, it was kind of disturbing in a way just to have this character care so much about this dude. I don't know if you guys got any of that kind of feeling, but it was just like kind of off-putting the whole time for me.
Well, I guess you're supposed to sort of. I agree that like maybe it wasn't like rendered as well to have you like fully buy in on that, but I get the impression he's supposed to be like, imagine if you just got to meet someone of the stature of Musk randomly.
But there's also a segment where he's talking about, I think it's a different guy, but he's talking about this other guy and how much of a genius he is and how good he was in school and how like everything came easy to him. Was he talking about Zapparoni there?
No.
Or some other guy?
He was talking about another student,
dude, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it just, I don't know. His like, the psychological angle I felt from him was just like this weird guy, Richard, just being obsessed with other dudes and how smart and cool they were. And it was weird. It was just really weird to me. Like, why are you writing about this?
Well,
and I kind of had the same feeling in Hume'swell too. I think there's a obsession of like a big figure in Hume'swell as well, just like a smarter, more successful guy, and this narrator is just like obsessed with him.
Well, I think this is something that's worth pointing out about Junger, at least so far in what I've read, is that like Paul was sort of saying, there is certainly a kind of great man-ism in his writing. In Hume'sville, it's the Condor and some of these other figures. Here it's Zapparoni, but here I think it's also a little bit more interesting because, like you were saying, Paul, psychologically there's a dimension to Richard in terms of his fascination with someone like Zapparoni, because of course the other major kind of male figure in his life and his influence is his military commander from the war,
Monterone.
Monteron or whatever.
Monterone, yeah.
Yeah, Monterone. And I think there's a pretty clear there's clear distinctions between the two of them. Monterone is this like kind of taskmaster, very old school, very band of brothers, like military hierarchy, and Zapparoni is kind of this hashtag disrupt, like Elon Musk, like innovation figure. But
Right.
they do overlap in some ways, in the sense that Zapparoni, like a lot of these fucking guys even today, lives on a compound entirely separated off from his own technology, no phone lines, no anything. So he sort of is rejecting the world that he's helping create in his own kind of day-to-day life.
He's got a compound.
It's literally a fucking Facebook or Google campus. It's fucking eerie the way it's described.
Yeah, right. And he's got, I think probably the most likely figure that Junger is riffing off of with Zapparoni has to be Disney, right? Like it has to be Disney at that point. Like,
I think from that time in history, there's no other reference.
Because Disney had borderline diabolical designs on the world's development as well, and like you have your fucking Imagineers, like these people.
Disney was a utopian.
Yeah, he was talking to
was
fucking
trying
Nixon
to create
and.
At one point, he wanted Epcot to be like an actual city, a utopian city.
Yes,
that was the initial goal for that.
Disney was on some fully automated luxury gay space communism shit.
He was, with no Jews. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So Zapparoni is arguably kind of an exaggerated. Disney was evil in his own way, and Zapparoni, I think, is a sort of an arguably exaggerated caricature. Being even more evil.
Well, he's already accomplished in this alternative world what Disney obviously like wished he could ever do, and we still can't do.
Right. And so we should probably talk about the rest of the job interview, because that's a big plot point and a way to underscore Zapparoni's kind of nefariousness, I suppose. So basically, Richard does this job interview. It's going kind of weirdly, and Zapparoni is just like, I have to take this phone call or something, or I have to leave for some reason, right? And he's like, go wander around the garden. And Richard is wandering around the garden of this huge estate on this compound, and he sees these glass bees hovering around, and they're all, like these tiny little intricate machines. And he becomes kind of transfixed by them, goes through these various reveries of memory, which, we'll talk about in more detail later, maybe. And then he sees what appears to be a severed human ear on the shore of a little pond, right?
Yeah.
And he starts going through this, like, what the fuck is this?
And he's like, oh, ho! It's like Blue Velvet.
Yes.
Like, oh, shit. This was cute until now.
Right. And it becomes a sort of like a test almost, right? Is that how you guys read it?
Yeah. Like, you go through a lot of different conceptions of what the fuck that means and whether or not it's real. And it does, yeah. It seems like a sort of test of metal to this guy.
Yeah, and it was for me. It was one of my favorite passages. I was seeing if I underlined it, but I didn't. But it was like a rare instance where I was like, "Oh, I like this writing." No spoilers on my score, but yeah.
Oh, is it gonna be bad, Paul?
Yes.
But then, of course, it's like, you get this internal process within Richard where he's like, "Oh, okay, well, it can't be real. Or maybe it's real." But then he winds up thinking, "Oh, well, no, it's probably just a facsimile that Zapparoni put here to freak me out and see what I would do. Should I go pick it up? Should I run back and tell somebody? Should I, And he goes through this sort of mental spiral how to handle seeing this thing that he's not sure is real or not, which of course is a sort of commentary on the sort of creeping unreality of these machines in general, right?
Right, the uncanny.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, I got the impression that like they potentially were real in a way. Like I definitely got like they dipped their toe a little bit. I was like, I remember highlighting something about the ears. Like I remember at one point, like by the time Richard's like, they're obviously they're not real, and then he sees a fly land on one of them, and he's like,
I have this passage underlined.
oh, do it up.
And just before you read it, Paul, and we should say ultimately they are not real. They're relics of one of Zapparoni's like disgruntled kind of Imagineers, right? Whose specialty was designing ears.
Yeah. So this is like right when the big blue fly lands on the ear. True. Now I saw something that took me aback and again sickened me. A big blue fly descending on one of these shapes. A fly like those one used to see around my butcher shops. But although unpleasant, the sight did not shake my confidence. If I had judged Zapparoni rightly, which I did not in the least pretend to do, this move of his, these ears, could only be artificial. Heads or tails, Zapparoni or King of Dahomey. I underlined that too because I didn't know what King that was. Dahomey was so fucking funny.
That was a weird.
He's spitting verse at this point. Yeah.
What is this, Don DeLillo?
Damn, what was that rapper's name in that fucking book?
Oh, I fucking forget. It was something Fez. It was Brother Fez.
Brother Fez. I was about to say
Brother
DJ
Fez.
Dow Jones.
Yeah,
little throwback.
Whoa, shout outs.
Whoa.
Yeah, it could have been. Well, so what? I mean, what do you make of this whole scene with the ear? He goes through this process with the ear. He, ultimately, Richard kind of has a break, and he does grab, what is it, a golf club or a tennis racket?
Golf club, yeah, and he just
and he smacks, destroys one of the automatons, and Zapparoni kind of comes out, and he's like, classic, just a mysterious rich guy, like nonchalant, like, oh well, at least you didn't get one of the good ones or something like that, or one of the complicated ones, and he's like, well, yeah, you're not getting this job, but maybe I got something else for you.
Yeah, he's like, you freaked out, you shit the bed, you're not getting the job.
Right.
But he gets a job, and he gets paid in advance. And
the job he gets is one of the weirdest aspects of the text to me. Because
it hints at like a sequel, even.
It does, yes, because the job that he gets, and we get a very, very brief, like just a couple pages describing the job, and we're left, hanging about whether or not Richard like rejects taking it or leaves or what. But the job he gets is basically like an internal, like corporate judge. Between like adjudicating between disagreements of the Zapparoni employee base, which are apparently like constantly fighting, which is interesting.
Yeah.
He's like an ombudsman, I guess would be the corporate term, right?
Yeah, right.
I think that's the right term, and that's kind of where the story ends. Like Richard gets this corporate ombudsman job, and he talks a little bit about how Zapparoni's, because the big thing about Zapparoni is he only hires genius artists, and it was very, I mean, again, I've talked already a couple times about the ways in which this book is predictive of a lot of shit in like really fucking specific and eerie ways, but down to the kind of like open corporate structure where there's no in time, there's no out time, people can show up whenever they want, work however long they want, and then leave, and the idea being that these people are all motivated, they're all smart, and that's the best way to get the most out of them. But of course, as Zapparoni says, that leads to a lot of disagreement. People have artistic attachment to what they make,
right?
And there's a lot of drama between the employees. And so Richard becomes the sort of adjudicator in those disagreements.
Right, and Richard, he's sort of characterized through the whole thing, and I think by his memories as a kind of like waffler sort of. He describes himself as defeatist, like he's somebody who really can't like bring himself to be committed one way or another to causes or whatever. Yeah, so it feels like a failing, and it's kind of why he also ends up failing the job interview. The first question is, I forget what it's about, but it's like something about the military, like should a certain battalion have like raised a white flag of surrender?
So it's this complicated hypothetical, right, where Zapparoni is constructing. It's like people rushing at like a set of. It's like one army rushing a set of kind of what are they called? Like not reinforcements, but bunkers. Sort of bunker type thing. And one bunker kind of realizes that the battle's lost. They check the numbers. They don't have ammunition or whatever. And the one bunker raises a white flag, but the other one doesn't. And then the army continues charging towards the other bunker, and it's sort of like this, almost like a moral thought experiment about like what is the correct thing to do.
It's like a
here.
trolley problem or something.
Yeah, it really is. And
then Richard's like, yeah, okay, like that's nice and clean. That's a nice clean hypothetical. But like it didn't go down like that. Like I was actually in there, and like there was a lot of like internal debate, and it wasn't like cowardice versus bravery. It was kind of more of like this, unforeseen blah blah blah. And in that, hedging kind of reveals himself as not the
waffler.
He's not going to be the muscle for Zapparoni like he was, I think, supposed to. That was the original opening. Like he's not going to be the guy that just goes and unquestioningly does potentially violent shit for Zapparoni.
Right, and I think it's interesting because the way it's written, it feels sort of like a failure that Richard doesn't get the original job because, the whole time he's like, I got my wife and, I got people to take care of. And his wife, who I think is a really interesting character, is we never actually meet her, but she's written in this way where she's like, overly like effusively praising Richard for basically nothing. He's deeply insecure about it because he's just like, I'm a shitlord, like I suck, I'm doing nothing with my life. And she's like, you're the best, I fucking love you.
Yeah. Wow, you're amazing. Yeah, every time he does anything.
Yeah. But I also wonder if the way that scene isn't written is sort of like, I don't know, it feels conflicted about how Richard actually is, because on the one hand I found myself weirdly rooting like, yeah, get the job, dude, get the fucking job. And then on the other hand, the way you just described it, Matt, it sort of like shows a level of intellectual kind of subtleness or subtlety. Wow, is subtleness? It's always subtlety. It's
not. Yeah
in terms of thinking about these issues to the point where he's never going to be just the brute kind of enforcer that his friend maybe kind of originally recommended him to be, which I think is also interesting in terms of like the way and maybe this is something we can put aside for the longer discussion, but like it made me think a lot about the way that we look at veterans in our society in terms of what jobs they tend to get hired for and where how we kind of view what they're able to do post experiences in wartime. It's like you see all these things they get hired by BlackRock or they get hired by some private security firm or whatever. That's kind of like the cultural discourse, and Richard sort of is bucking that trend as a character,
sort of, but also like his description of a lot of his friends was that like he's very like subtle about it and doesn't really say anything too loudly, but it's like, yeah, all my war buddies, they're doing weird shady shit now.
True.
Like,
so yeah, he's definitely an outlier.
Yeah. And even Twinnings, right? He just found something with more of a veneer where he's not really directly getting his hands dirty. but he's just a sort of middleman to get mercenaries essentially for people.
Yep.
Like, it seems like.
Yeah, that's what Twining seems. Yeah, and at the beginning of the book, Richard makes a big deal out of like, this is basically the least like violent and morally objectionable job that this guy could possibly get me.
Right, because he's entertaining almost at one point when he's sort of like in his head, he's like, I'm not taking the Zapparoni job. It's too weird. Like Zapparoni's weird. There's ears all over the place here. That's not normal. We don't know where that other guy went that disappeared who used to work for Zapparoni. He's, I don't know if you remember this, Paul, but he's like, I'll just, you know what? I'll just go back to Twinnings or whatever. He'll give me a job running a poker room, and I'll just see scumbags illegally, you know, making deals and being in this poker room. If people insult me, I'll just take it. I don't care. Like, it's better than this like weird thing that where I don't really know where I stand.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I was having trouble like even distinguishing why the connection between like a Zapparoni like figure, like what does he even have to do with like narratively, what does he even have to do with this kind of veteran group of people?
I think that
was it because like he was like a spawn of post-war life. I don't know. You like never really hit with me.
I think the connection, which you're right, like in the novel itself, is maybe not as like I don't know, in your face. Is just that like the first like real human to technology smashing together happens on a battlefield, and then you know, you like, so our soldiers are the people who kind of like face the repercussion, because, and I think this is very important, the fact that Zapparoni is like an entertainer, Disney like guy who makes like the world's most addictively entertaining movies with automatons, and the like connection between entertainment and like war, like Zapparoni makes things for both situations, right? Is probably one of the most prophetic aspects of it for me, where he's like, you know, you got Richards who's like, he's seeing the kind of he's kind of brutally collided with technology, and it's sort of like at its most overtly violent, and now he's in this world where that's true, and you don't get these you know, somewhat romanticized noble knight riding into the battlefield kind of situations, and now you have a new type of person emerging, which is like Zapparoni, where it's like he's doing entertainments with the technology, because there's you know, I forget what there is. There's some sort of like genesis of tech where it's like, you know, it's like the internet or whatever. It's a military, it has a military application that becomes an entertainment, which in and of itself,
like everything basically,
which in and of itself is there to like embroil people in ultimately military aims, you know, or whatever. It's sort of a feedback loop, and that's what I think Richards is having like a tough time dealing with, basically, as somebody who, you know, is in a sort of alternative reality analog to the post World War I and II world.
What do you say, Paul?
Yeah, like sort of like the pain of all of these veterans is just being like manifested in entertainment and flying bees, weird blue flies.
Yeah, you know, Marvel partnering
with
with like whatever the
Right.
military, and
Right.
like, you know, fucking Michael Bay being
drone
getting
technology.
getting brand new
so they
you
can
know,
film like the Hulk.
yeah, where the Hulk can punch the newest military like plane that they had developed, you know, like this kind of thing.
Well, it is. It's like the it's like the number, you know, the top two customers for fucking Raytheon are the United States government and Marvel. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like,
It's like that mixed with like Pixar, like hyper addictive, treacly, like animated beings designed mathematically to be the most emotionally affecting and appealing, so that people want to fuck the fox from Zootopia. You know what I mean? Like it's all.
I mean,
I mean, it's all kind of hinted at and gestured at in here, which was what was impressive to me. And I did, wood. Is that what you're about to say? I meant the rabbit, but you okay?
Wood.
I was just saying unless you know what I mean.
I'm gonna look this person up.
Who?
It's the rabbit you're looking for.
It's the rabbit.
Or the fox. I think Matt was talking about the rabbit though.
Paul.
But I do want to read.
I want to see it.
All right. Well, while Paul looks that up, I'm gonna read a passage about
Google image search graphic Zootopia pornography.
Don't. Well, you can. Okay. So,
/DeviantArt.
Mm-hmm.
While Paul looks that up and we wait with bated breath for his verdict on how hot the characters from Zootopia are.
I can't find it. It's like I'm getting this weird Banksy rabbit.
You're not good at the internet if you can't find it.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out on the Patreon segment.
Yeah.
So this is from page 155 to 156, and I feel like this is kind of emblematic of Junger's attitude towards technology in general, or at least the attitude that's evinced in this book. It's a little long, but you need only stand in front of beggars collected outside a railway station to see that in our midst other rules prevail. We have made progress since Larry and that surgeon of the Napoleonic Wars, and not only in surgery. It's an optical illusion to attribute these injuries to accident. Actually, accidents are the result of injuries that took place long ago in the embryo of our world. And the increase in amputations is one of the indications of the triumph of a dissecting mentality. The loss occurred before it was visibly taken into account. The shot was fired long ago, and when it later appears in the guise of scientific progress, though it be on the moon, a hole is inevitable. Human perfection and technical perfection are incompatible. If we strive for one, we must sacrifice the other. There is, in any case, a parting of the ways. Whoever realizes this will do cleaner work one way or the other. Technical perfection strives towards the calculable, human perfection towards the incalculable. Perfect mechanisms, around which, therefore, stands an uncanny but fascinating halo of brilliance, evoke both fear and a titanic pride which will be humbled not by insight, but only by catastrophe. The fear and enthusiasm we experience at the sight of perfect mechanisms are in exact contrast to the happiness we feel at the sight of a perfect work of art. We sense an attack on our integrity, on our wholeness. That arms and legs are lost or harmed is not yet the greatest danger. And I feel like that's, kind of sums up Junger's attitude about technological development in all of its sort of, ambivalence and, it's not purely negative. And he sort of says, even in that passage, like you can kind of pick one or the other, but you can't do both, right? Like you can either kind of emphasize the technology and the sort of perfection of, I'm searching for the word, but just the kind of clean, inhuman technicality of these mechanisms and these automata that he's talking about in this book, or you can embrace the kind of messy, but arguably more authentic humanness of, art, classical art or music or whatever, and that spicy take potentially.
Yeah.
So
I don't really see why you'd have to choose one or the other. I don't really understand what his rationale is.
Well, it's the sort of like, to me, it's the sort of like interminable question of, what is it about art that makes it good and beautiful, right? Is it the human element? I mean, we were having this conversation briefly on the Discord the other day about, which you can get access to by subscribing to Spinecracker's Patreon for $2 a month. Oh, no. You can, wait, yeah. You can get this Discord for $2,
yeah. It's $2, right. Dude.
What, literally just buy one less fucking candy bar.
You fat idiot.
We were thinking, no, you sexy, beautiful listener.
Whoops.
But we were talking about imagine a world where a novel that we would otherwise evaluate as beautiful or important, and you read it and you loved it and you cried and it affected you deeply, and then you later found out that it was written by an AI, right? Would that change your view of it. Now, we're not going to answer that question in the next 10 minutes. We're going to answer it in the hour and a half for the patrons. But I think that's what Junger is getting at a little bit through his background and thinking specifically about war, and I think that's where it gets tough, and that's where people get hung up, because war is never beautiful in the way that classical art is or whatever. War is never, and yet Junger writes about it as if it was beautiful, and that there's a similar disanalogy between the AI novel and Moby Dick as there is between the tanks and the drones and cavalry riding down a hill.
Yeah, my impression was like, and this is just for Junger, like, again, I have not read Storm of Steel or On Pain or any of these other things, but like, yeah, he has a romanticization of pain and self-sacrifice and like putting oneself through the extremes, and those are things that war offers, like a young man, to be forged in this, kind of furnace of life and death struggle, which brings you closer to all other things, because those are like the fundamentals of existence or something like that, right? So and this is based off of like later on when we read Hume'sville, and just kind of like what I know about his kind of thought afterwards, that war seems to be the most like kind of human and individualistic maybe thing. And I think what he dislikes about war, and what got him in trouble later on in all this, was like authority and hierarchy, a little bit, and that being more and more given over to the demands of machinery as like something that then kind of dictated the outcomes of war, and like the what was going on within it. It was more like servicing machines to do the work for you. So, and I don't know, maybe something like that colored his view moving forward.
Well, speaking of the demands of machinery, we are
the clock
about 10 minutes away from the hour, which is our artificial mechanistic cutoff for the public version of this episode.
Yeah, sorry.
So we're
going to amputate our talking.
Yeah, exactly. Which means...
Barely recognizable.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're a fascist, Harry.
He did become one.
True. Welcome to... We literally just read another book.
So let us put him in a house.
Talk about Harry. We're talking about Harry Potter.
We're talking about Harry Potter.
Harry H.P.
So this is the segment of the show where we put all of the characters, or at least the most, relevant ones that we get enough information about from the book that we just read, into their respective Harry Potter houses. Who we got today? We're talking about, we'll do, I think, Zapparoni, right? Mm-hmm. Richard. And yep. I feel like we get enough information about, what's his name, Matt?
Montaron?
Montaron, yeah. No, I don't know about the wife.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Do we get enough info about her? I feel like she's sketched. And the only information we get about her is in Richard's own kind of like insecure brain. You know what I mean?
She's more about Richard than she is a person.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's start with Montaron.
She's an artificial reflection.
True.
Yeah, and he's definitely, it's Blade Runner 2049. Yeah.
Let's talk about Montaron. Is that it? What is it?
Yeah, I think so.
Montaron? Whatever.
I feel
Monterey
like you're trying
Jack.
way too hard. Monterey, yeah.
Monterey. I love California.
Montaron.
I love California.
Dude, SoCal. I don't know.
I feel like he's just a classic Slytherin. It's all tradition. It's all, but I mean, there's a lot of weird things in him, which in the sense that like, he's clearly like a bravery and never leave a man behind. There's a flashback scene where
I was gonna say Pufflepuff.
So yeah,
it's a little bit of a Hufflepuff thing.
Loyalty, but it's also all of his other. I guess this is my defense for the Slytherin. All of his other commitments are under the auspices of a larger commitment, which is to like military tradition.
Sure, but I still think that commitment
Is that a
still
Slytherin
makes
vibe,
him.
or is that a
I think it's still Hufflepuff. Why?
Yeah.
What?
Well, because
extreme loyalty to country and guns? How is that? I don't know. I'm siding more with Hufflepuff.
Like an overriding and overwhelming loyalty that informs all their decisions? Yeah.
I know, but it's about where that loyalty comes from for me, I guess is what I'm saying. And that loyalty to me comes from a overriding loyalty to tradition. So it's not clear to me that Montaron, independently would arrive at the same conclusions that he does outside of his role in the military hierarchy, which to me is a Slytherin vibe.
But I mean, I thought the ambition aspect of a Slytherin shifted. I mean, obviously there's the Death Eaters and they're loyal to, like, for instance, Voldemort. But you also have Dumbledore's army. So, there's a lot of different
True
types of people that can get involved in that. And I don't know, maybe you're right, but he seems more on the wholesome end and the less ambitious end of a loyalty.
I'm just gonna stamp my feet and be wrong and say Slytherin.
Okay. You're objectively wrong about fake houses.
Okay, let's talk about the arguably main character, Zapparoni.
Slytherin.
I think he's got to be a Slytherin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The man doesn't get a lot of
Slytherin.
speaking parts. He doesn't say a whole lot,
No.
but his whole Google-ass campus fucking prison/fun zone that he exists in is deeply, deeply weird, and he is so ambitious.
I'm surprised fucking Junger didn't write him as like bouncing around on an exercise ball with handles.
Yeah, I know, dude. Just something. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a fucking Slytherin.
Yeah.
That's
He's dominating the world, and he loves it.
one of the easiest slam dunks on the show, I think.
100%.
Paul.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish that Zapparoni would have been riding on like a Segway that Junger created in 1957.
I wish he was at least riding on one
I
of
could
his
totally
like
see him.
weird automata.
That would have been, but that's the whole thing, is that he doesn't even like them. He doesn't use them. He doesn't have any of them in his house.
That's true, and I like that detail. Like,
which is the same way all of these.
Which actually makes sense. It's like Mark Zuckerberg doesn't have social media and like doesn't own a webcam
Exactly.
None for
dude.
me,
It's
please.
Same thing.
because he knows.
Because they know it's evil and corrupting.
yeah.
Yeah.
They've seen the sausage being made,
That's right.
Yeah,
and it's a lot of people's data.
they made the sausage.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, our boy Richard. This one's another easy slam dunk for me.
Oh yeah.
Hufflepuff.
Hufflepuff.
Yeah.
Good, Hufflepuff, waning Hufflepuff, waxing Gryffindor.
Okay. Yeah. I'll buy that. Yeah.
I'm gonna take it back. I think he's a Sagittarius.
I mean, you would be right up Junger's alley with the astrology bullshit.
True.
That's another thing that he loves. That
Weird
comes up often.
mysticism shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah,
also.
I'm gonna go with Hufflepuff. I think he wants to suck Zapparoni's pepperoni, and he's just.
Which also.
Not to say that that's a Hufflepuff trait. I'm just saying he just like bows down to the old man.
I just think he's loyal to his wife.
Well, that's true too.
Yeah. to make
Deeply.
it nice.
Well.
And the memory of horses.
A quick shout out if you want to read about how horoscopes are secretly fascist and how Junger is a fascist for liking them. Shout outs to Adorno's The Stars Down to Earth, which is an excellent text analyzing the sort of socio-history of the zodiac and how it attracts a fascist personality.
Whoa.
Sure.
That's interesting.
Sorry to piss off some of our listeners, I'm sure. You're not fascists. I'm just saying it's an interesting book.
The Zodiac is interesting.
The Zodiac
Killer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Think about that.
Yes.
Recently found.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Ted Cruz.
Patreon only content.
Okay, so let's give this book a friggin' score. And you may have noticed, people, just to preface that Paul has been ominously silent much of this episode so far. If you want to hear Paul if you want to hear Paul unleashed on this book, that's Patreon only for as little as 2 bones a month. You know the drill.
Yeah, Paul's about to go ham. He's about to bird dog this shit.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'll go first. I'm happy to go first on this one. I liked it. I think there is a shit ton more to talk about, which Paul will be unhappy to hear.
Yes.
And I liked it, but I would not recommend it, if that makes sense. It's not a book that I think most people will pick up and be like, weird sci-fi, predicting Elon Musk, automata, and whatever. And then they're going to read it and be like, it's not that at all. I think, I don't know what score Paul's going to give this book, but my guess is that it's going to be much, much closer to the average opinion of a reasonable person who picks this book up to read it than mine is going to be. I like Junger. I think he's an interesting figure. And I guess I would say if you let the book work on its own terms, it's a much more enjoyable read than thinking it's going to be some like action-packed sci-fi thriller or whatever, which it's not. So I'm going to say 3.53.
Wow. Okay.
So Paul, by tradition, Paul
it?
has to go next because
because Matt picked. He's the last.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, we didn't do the Scrabble word.
Oh shit! I have one.
Oh, thank you for reminding me.
Me too.
All right, so
you want to do that first?
Let's just do that now. Let's just get that out of the way. So
okay.
This is another segment that we intermittently decide to do, and
if we remember,
and it's a word that we found in the book that we either didn't know or would make a good Scrabble word, or that we thought was just sort of kind of cool. And mine for this book is amortized, which is on page 77. AMORTIZED, which apparently means gradually write off the initial cost of an asset over a period, or to reduce or pay off a debt with regular payments.
You've never had you've amortized things for sure. Everyone, I think we all have.
Yes, yeah.
Within a sort of debt structure, yeah.
Not my student loan debt. Patreon.com/spinecrackers. 2 bones a month.
Yeah, mine too. Give me like 200 bones a month, actually, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Matt, do you want to go? I got one lined up.
Do it.
Mine is agog, AGOG. I think it's a good Scrabble word if you have 2 G's and
great word.
A.
Great word.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
You might want to get rid of those. It means very eager or curious to hear or see something. Like, you're all very agog to know my score.
Oh.
True.
Fucking beautiful, dude. Mine was, he was going off about plants and stuff because the book's called The Glass Bees. We didn't say it really, I feel like, but there's bees that are made of glass in the book. There's some of Zabroni's machines.
Patreon-only content.
My word was calyx, which I believe is also a pretty decent Scrabble word. CALYX. Oh my god, pop-up ads on the Merriam-Webster fucking site. No.
Boo, Merriam-Webster, sponsor us.
Yeah, the usually green outer whorl of a flower consisting of separate or fused petals and or a cup-like division of the renal pelvis.
I love a good renal pelvis.
Collective name for several cup-like structures in animal anatomy. Yeah. Calyx.
Yeah. All right, well, Paul, score time.
So yeah, I didn't like Eamesville, and I was giving this book a chance. When I talked to Matt about it the other day in person, I was like, you know what, Matt, I don't hate it. But then something shifted, and I was like, I'm giving into my hatred. I can't pretend to like it. And it really doesn't come down to the ideas for me. It's just like I can't get around the style that he writes in. I just can't fucking do it. It's so boring to me. It's like written by a like an accountant that just decided to write a philosophy science fiction book. Not to say that accountants are boring. I know a couple that are really cool, but you understand what I mean. It's just like there's no narrative that is gripping at all by the way he writes. It's just like flatline to me, and even the slightly interesting moments are just so overshadowed by the general style of writing. And I think I really, really hold value to style and a writing style that, grips my attention, that is enjoyable to read. And it's like, it just fell so flat for me. My favorite review on Goodreads was someone gave it 1 star and just wrote, boring as shit.
That is concise.
But yeah, I don't know. The ideas are there. I do want to talk about some of the ideas because I think that a lot of them translate to like a lot of science fiction even now. But it's like, if you have ideas, I want it to be presented to me as a reader in an enjoyable way. Maybe I'm a simpleton, but I can't get behind it because it's just like, ugh. It's just boring journal writing to me.
Okay.
So, a score. 2. Hate it.
2.0. 2.0 is not hate. 2.0 is like, didn't love it.
It's like whatever, yeah.
All right, 1.9.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go. You broke the barrier.
Yeah. Yeah. I also enjoyed reading the book. I feel like there was, again, just a lot. There was just a lot of perception in the trajectory of, I guess, certain trends that I always appreciate, especially in things that are sort of nominally science fiction. Like Gabe said, Junger is just kind of a fascinating figure, and I found the digressions enjoyable. I think they do also just serve a sort of purpose, narrativizing like thoughts as they. I don't think it's as haphazard as all that. It's definitely more about a man's interior, though, right, than like anything going on really. Anyway, yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I'm gonna give it a 3.5. Even.
Nice. Dead on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess I liked it the most, which is surprising to me. So, but I'm generous. You all know me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You just love books, dude.
I love books. I love reading them. I love the cool ideas, and I love talking about them, which we're going to do more.
Ideas.
Which we're going to do more on the full version of this episode, which you can access at Patreon. Which you can access at patreon.com/mindcrackers for as little as $2 a month. And as always, there's a lot more to talk about, and we're going to do that right now. Thank you for listening. YouTube.com/mindcrackers, Instagram. Oh, shout out. We should have done this at the beginning. Maybe we can edit this if we can. But shout outs to Paul for our new fucking logo, which slaps.
Oh
yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You all have noticed the glow.
Go look at it. Yeah.
The Spinecrackers
2.0.
2.0 glow up. All right, bye.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.